Last month, a friend brought back an ordinary bag of flour from a Portuguese supermarket. I looked at the ingredient list. One word: wheat flour. I walked to my own cabinet and picked up gold medal: bleached wheat flour, malted barley flour, niacin, iron, thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid. 7 ingredients for the same product. I bought 5 brands, read every label, and checked every ingredient list. Today, I'll show you 7 things you've never noticed in the flour aisle and 3 options worth reaching for instead. Before breaking down each brand, there's one rule that gives you the answer before you even open the video. Look for the word bleached or enriched on the package. If it's there, the flour has been processed in a way that removed something from it and then added something else back. Here's what that means in practice. The word bleached means the flour was chemically whitened, most commonly with benzoyl peroxide or chlorine gas. This compresses the natural aging process from weeks to hours. In the European Union and the United Kingdom, this approach has been banned for flour since 1998 under the Bread and Flour Regulations. Not restricted, banned. There, flour ages naturally, or mills simply select grain blends that don't require chemical intervention. The word enriched means this: during milling, the bran and germ were removed along with the natural vitamins and minerals, and then a few synthetic ones were put back. In 1941, the FDA established an enrichment standard to address vitamin deficiencies among Americans for whom white bread was a dietary staple. The solution was justified at the time, but since then, industrial milling has become the norm, and enriched on a package is now simply the technical condition of most American flour. In the EU, flour enrichment is voluntary, not mandatory, because removing nutrients from grain and then restoring a portion of them isn't standard practice there to begin with. Remember those 2 words. They are the entire test. But to understand how significant this is, the numbers are worth looking at. During industrial milling, wheat loses up to 80% of its vitamin E, most of its magnesium, zinc, and manganese, virtually all of the bran fiber, and the fatty acids from the germ. Through enrichment, 5 substances are returned: niacin, iron, thiamine, riboflavin, and folic acid. 5 out of several dozen. The rest stays in the bran and germ that went to animal feed or supplement manufacturing. This is the standard industrial milling process, unchanged for decades. So enriched on a package is not a quality claim. It's a description of what already happened to the grain before it reached the bag. Start with gold medal, a brand on the shelf since 1880, long since become something like furniture. It's just there, and nobody asks what's inside anymore. The official ingredient list confirms 7 components, and the first is bleached wheat flour. Bleaching is printed right on the package, but most people read the words gold medal and stop. The ingredient list is the other side of the bag, unread for years. If you specifically want gold medal, get their unbleached version, which exists in the lineup. And while we're here, both gold medal and Pillsbury are made by one company, General Mills. On the shelf, they sit as competitors, but behind the wall, it's one plant and one corporation. Pillsbury is next, and the ingredient list there is identical to gold medal with minor variations in component order. But the marketing is different: warmer, family-oriented, nostalgic. The packaging invokes the image of a grandmother's kitchen, while the product is made by the same industrial process. Between these 2 bags, the difference is design, not flour. Great value is the cheapest option on the shelf and, judging by the ingredient list, practically identical to both. Walmart doesn't disclose which mill supplies flour for its store brand, and that's standard practice. But the ingredient list is confirmed through Walmart.com. 7 ingredients, first of which is bleached wheat flour. If you buy great value and think you're getting something fundamentally different from gold medal, you most likely aren't. The savings come from the packaging, not from a different approach to the grain. Now look at what's written or not written on a few other bags. White lily is an interesting case where the substitution happens not in the ingredient list, but in the positioning. A brand since 1883, a Southern tradition genuinely irreplaceable for biscuits. But it's sold as all-purpose flour. White lily is made from 100% soft winter wheat with a naturally low protein content, around 8%, confirmed on the brand's official site. Most all-purpose flour sits at 10 to 12%. This means white lily behaves more like pastry flour, and if you try to make yeasted bread from it, it will be flat and dense. Not because you did something wrong, because you took biscuit flour and baked bread. This leads to something even less visible than protein, substances that don't appear on retail packaging at all. Potassium bromate. This entry concerns not what you buy at the grocery store, but what's in bakery bread or packaged baked goods. It strengthens gluten and gives dough better rise. The EWG identified it in more than 200 American products as of 2026. The FDA permits its use at concentrations up to 50 parts per million, 21 CFR Part 137. In the United Kingdom, it has been banned since April 1st, 1990. In the EU, Canada, Brazil, and China as well. IRC classifies it as a possible human carcinogen. California Prop 65 requires a cancer warning on products containing it. The rest of the U.S. does not. If you buy packaged bread, check the ingredient list. The words bromated flour or potassium bromate mean it's in there. Next, azodicarbonamide or additives. The FDA permits it as a dough conditioner and flour bleach up to 45 parts per million. It's also used in manufacturing foam rubber, hence the name Yoga Mat Chemical that went through the media in 2014 following a petition against Subway that gathered over 92,000 signatures. Subway removed ADA from its recipe within a few weeks. In the EU, it has not been on the approved food additive list since 2004. In Singapore, using it in food carries a fine of up to $450,000 and up to 15 years imprisonment. In the U.S., it remains legal. It's not on home flour packaging, but in commercial bread, rolls, and tortillas. Check. The last entry is the simplest trap. Invisible without comparison. The label all-purpose flour in the U.S. carries no standardized protein requirement. The Federal Standard of Identity describes enrichment requirements but sets no specific protein percentage for all-purpose. So 2 bags with the same label sit on the same shelf, where one contains 8% protein, White Lily, and the other 11.7%, King Arthur. A difference of 3 to 4 percentage points is the difference between biscuit flour and bread flour. In France, every flour type has a designation, T45, T55, T65, based on the degree of milling, and the buyer immediately understands what they're picking up. In the U.S., that doesn't exist, so if your bread doesn't rise, or your biscuits are too dense, the first suspicion should fall not on the recipe, but on the protein number that isn't on the package, but decides everything. And before moving on, a separate note about the wheat itself. Because the conversation about flour ingredients usually stops at processing and rarely reaches the grain it was milled from. Most commercial American flour is made from high-yield wheat varieties, developed in the second half of the 20th century with one goal: maximum yield per acre. These varieties produce more grain but have lower mineral content compared to older types. This isn't hidden or prohibited. It's simply the result of how agriculture changed. Some European mills still use heritage varieties, spelt, einkorn, emmer, partly because a tradition of small-scale milling survived there that wasn't entirely displaced by industrial production. In the U.S., this segment exists, but is small and barely present in mass retail. So when you pick up a standard bag of all purpose from an American shelf, the question isn't only what was done to the flour after milling, it starts earlier in the field. One simple test shows the difference between two bags of all purpose flour with no lab equipment required. Take the same amount of flour from two different brands, say Gold Medal and King Arthur, and make a simple dough with water at a 3.2 ratio by weight. No yeast, no salt, only flour and water. Knead for 2 minutes, then leave both pieces for 10 minutes under a towel. Then stretch each piece by hand as thin as you can. Higher protein flour will be more elastic and stretch without tearing. Lower protein flour will tear sooner and feel more brittle. This isn't marketing or a subjective impression. It's a visible difference in gluten structure. The same difference that determines whether your bread rises or stays dense. For a more precise test, a kitchen scale and a timer are all you need. One practical note for anyone planning to switch to unbleached or whole wheat flour after this video. Bleached flour keeps for a long time. The chemical treatment effectively stabilizes the product. Unbleached all-purpose, stored properly, holds for a few months. But whole wheat and any flour where the germ has been retained spoils much faster, sometimes within 2 to 3 months at room temperature, because the germ contains natural oils that oxidize. The sign is simple. The flour starts smelling rancid or like modeling clay. If that smell is present, the flour is spoiled and no recipe will save it. The solution is straightforward. Store whole wheat and unbleached flour in an airtight container in the refrigerator or freezer. Freezing doesn't affect flour quality and significantly extends shelf life. This is especially important if you're buying a larger bag to save money. If choosing without compromise, that's King Arthur Unbleached All-Purpose. 2 ingredients: unbleached hard red wheat flour and enzyme. No chemical bleaching, no bromate, no artificial preservatives. This is the company's official position, confirmed on their website. Protein at 11.7%, the highest in the mass retail market. The company was founded in 1790 and is 100% employee-owned. A 5-pound bag runs about $7 to $9 depending on the store. A loaf of bread at a bakery here costs $6 to $8. So even the expensive bag of flour stretched across several loaves is obvious math in favor of home baking. If budget matters, Walmart carries an unbleached line under the same great value brand. Shorter ingredient list, lower price, no bleaching. It's not the same grain quality as King Arthur, but it's a more honest choice compared to their bleached version sitting right next to it on the same shelf. Look for the word unbleached and check the ingredient list before the bag goes in the cart. And for the most budget-conscious, nearly every chain carries a store brand with 2 or 3 ingredients if you know where to look. Aim for unbleached, a minimal ingredient list, and protein no lower than 10% if it's listed. One more thing, folic acid in the ingredient list is not a problem in itself. The FDA mandated adding it to enriched flour in 1998, following confirmed evidence of its effect on preventing neural tube defects in newborns. The question isn't the folic acid, it's how much else is in there and why. I kept thinking about that friend and that bag from Portugal for days after our conversation. She didn't bring me anything special. She brought ordinary flour. And that ordinariness explained everything. Somewhere else, ordinary flour is just milled grain. Here it became a 7-ingredient product, where a chemical process replaced time and synthetic additives replaced what should have stayed in the grain from the start, not because it tastes better, because it's faster and cheaper at industrial scale. And because nobody really asked. Now you know what to ask. Next time you're in the flour aisle, flip the bag and look at the first word in the ingredient list. If it says bleached, you now know what that means and why that word simply doesn't exist on flour in other countries.